Hi, I'm Mike Ford. I'm the founder of SiteMinder and bringing you this week's World Hotel Index update. This last couple of weeks have been tumultuous to say the least across the globe, with several pockets of virus resurgence and the pandemic taking hold again, with restrictions again being imposed in a number of locations. And we can see that actually reflected in some of the booking trends. After several weeks of our global bookings accelerating, we actually saw in the last week that there's a plateauing of this acceleration. In fact, a slight decrease in the relative year-over-year booking volumes. So for the first time since March, we can see a decline in the comparative bookings from 2019, where we were last week at just over 52% of 2019 booking levels. We're now down to 51.5% of 2019 booking levels. So a slight decrease in relative booking levels over 2019 in the last week. This incremental drop, while fairly small, it does represent a pivotal moment as the direction and momentum changes. And it also sort of, I suppose, is reflective of the seriousness of the pandemic and how quickly it can flare up, but also the nature of consumer confidence, which is so closely tied to the ongoing health crisis. So the correlation is quite evident in a number of countries where cities and states have entered lockdown again, and where there are new waves of the COVID disease. The United States is potentially the most visible sort of example of this. After a 6-week quite strong growth in hotel bookings, the country has seen COVID accelerate in a number of states, particularly Florida, as many people would be aware. As I mentioned, Miami being named the epicenter again recently, and booking volumes there have actually plummeted from 87% of last year levels down to 33% of last year levels, where it's been sitting for a couple of weeks. Similarly, in Australia, the hotel booking momentum has continued to actually drop for more than a week now, brought down specifically by Melbourne, which is actually back into lockdown now after a second wave, unfortunately, of the coronavirus cases, which actually exceeded the first peak of the city's cases in March. So quite a serious outbreak there, and Melbourne's booking momentum has dropped almost 75% over the last few weeks. Within Asia, looking at Hong Kong, they've imposed tough new restrictions this past week after a spike in coronavirus cases. Even though they've had a history of success, this new spike has sort of scared the horses, and new restrictions have impacted the already decreasing volume of hotel bookings. Now they're sitting at 48% of 2019 levels, after hitting a high of over 61% earlier this month. However, not every spot in the world is as gloomy as that, and actually the UK is defying the odds, really. Even though Leicester's entered a lockdown, re-entered a lockdown again, UK is still overall our second fastest riser, and this is for the second consecutive week now. So booking volumes in the UK have risen from 31.7% to nearly 49% year over year over the last 2 weeks. And of all the bookings made during this period, 4 in 5 have been for stays between now and September. So still really short-dated lead times on bookings. This week, only Sweden outpaced the UK, experiencing 27.4% growth to reach 72% of last year booking levels. Although controversial in terms of how they've approached the response to COVID, it's still proving continued success within the Nordics as a whole in containing the spread relative to other regions. Other positive news from the Nordics: Norway's hotel bookings have climbed consistently now for 3 months and sitting at 92% of last year booking levels, which is very healthy. And so perhaps they could actually surpass 2019, who knows. Ireland and Malaysia too aren't far behind. The Ireland's at 84% and Malaysia at 81% year over year. booking levels, so that's pretty healthy as well. As I sit here in Sydney, even though Australia's been super successful over the last few months in containing the virus, we now are facing here in Sydney a new wave potentially of coronavirus. In the footsteps of Melbourne. Hopefully, it doesn't get to the stage that Melbourne's got to. But what it does do is sort of really drives home that it can flare up anywhere, anytime, and it's a bit of a cycle in terms of how cities go up and down. So who knows? It's so unpredictable at the moment. No one knows really where it'll end. But the good news is our industry has proven its strength and resilience like never before, and hopefully we continue to do so. In the meantime, as always, you can access the World Hotel Index live on SiteMinder.com. Take care of yourselves, and we'll speak to you again for another update next week.